Hey, this is Shaheen from Webupon, and this is episode number 2 of Chalk Talk Thursday. Today I wanted to cover why you want to be first to market for content and cover how to do so more often, as well as some contention around why you may or may not want to be first to market. So being first to market for content really means that you create the first foundational piece in a market that hasn't really existed before. And there's multiple benefits to that I'll get into, but typically the contention arises around the fact that people strategically want to cover a higher volume term or like a content pillar, right? That's really attractive over here, but there might be another small sub niche that's worth 10 visits a month now, but over the next year, 2 or 3 years, it could turn into a really huge niche or just topic for your customer base. So being first to market in that area and being able to locate those opportunities means that you can really grow out your business in what's typically a pretty cost-effective manner, especially compared to when you're trying to get into a more contentious part of the market, sort of like where there's just more competition, it's gonna be harder. Smaller pies mean sharper knives, or you could, if you want the blue ocean strategy rather than the red ocean strategy, however you wanna sort of contextualize that. Basically, you wanna find an area where no one's done something before and then cover it. So, the first reason why you want to be first to market for content is because you want to establish the niche while it's still in reach. So if a niche is more competitive, it'll probably be because a couple hundred people have covered it. So if there's fewer competitors in an arena, that typically means that your piece will rank. The only downside is you're essentially taking a gamble as to whether there will be traffic there in the future or not, right? So really it's like when you come in first, you're gonna be number one, you get to be the person that everyone looks to in that little subtopic within the wider market that you're trying to hit. The second reason is that you want to be first to market for content is because you're gonna get more links and media mentions. Generally speaking, if you're first to market and you're able to rank, that means that all reporters are gonna reference you first, right? They're gonna Google the topic, they're gonna see you, and you're more likely to get links. And just generally within the industry, you're also more likely to get links, right? So if you're the only person, suddenly everyone's just gonna start pointing at you, and that's really gonna establish your ability to keep ranking for the term and also just generate links to your site, right? It's a lot harder to, when someone's already been this guy and you just write a completely new piece, it's a lot harder to get these same people to link to you later on than it would be just to sort of like have been the person that got those links to start with. The third reason is you really want to avoid being an also-and in the market, right? You don't want to be someone that's constantly following the competition. You want to be a little bit more cutting edge. So being first to market for a content piece typically means that you can frame your business as being a little bit ahead of the curve of a lot of the other competitors, right? It's like the competition's covering things that we talked about in 2016. It's 2018, 2019, 2020. We're really ahead of the curve as a brand. And you can really sort of establish yourself as the expert in that particular area. Sort of think about how, amongst my group of friends, we reference Uber for any ride-sharing app. Even if we're using Lyft, we still sort of call it using an Uber. That's really what being an also-and in the market does to you. You're kind of left in second or third place fighting for crumbs. The fourth reason is you really want to be responsive to customers. So if you're aware of issues before they arise, or as customers are taking your product for a particular use case, that can be of huge advantage. Just to completely make up some use case, or we can use a legitimate one, right? So as the cannabis industry grows and CBD becomes more mainstream, there's a trillion HVAC companies, right? The HVAC companies that talk about grow room compliance and how to deal with heat, moisture, all these issues that are pretty specific to the cannabis industry are going to be the first to market HVAC companies that end up getting the links, and again, don't have to fight for links later on. So I think the real question that most people end up having is, how do you actually locate these opportunities? How do you create this content, this first to market content, before other people get to it? So the first way to really do that is just to monitor social and be a member of your community. And honestly, you should be doing this anyways. Where people really struggle, I think, with content marketing is they're so divorced from their market generally, or they're used to just targeting in PPC where you're already able to find someone that has a query. They don't really think about this broader market where you're really part of the community and you're able to use that feedback across the board in your marketing. But again, that helps you sort of realize where people are having questions and you can be there first. So, that's sort of an intuitive factor, right? Second thing I would do to locate opportunities is use Google Trends or keyword rankings. So for Google Trends, generally speaking, you're going to want a sort of Google trend line that looks like this. You don't want a trend line that's already sort of peaked. If the market's already peaked, then you're probably a little bit late. And again, you're probably going to find a lot of competitors that have already covered the topic. So Google Trends can be useful. I'm a little bit leery of it because we're going to expect that as people get their questions answered, the traffic volume is going to decrease over time anyways. So I'm not super in love with the data that Google Trends provides, but that can be a good way to ascertain at least whether or not a topic is peaked or not. The other thing that I would mention is keyword rankings. So keyword rankings are immensely tricky when you're trying to locate a first to market piece of content topic where you can sort of leverage in a keyword and get traffic over time. So I think the caveat there with keyword rankings is you want to take a piece that you've already established that's already doing quite well. So let's say this piece exists in this one specific vertical. You've already established the piece, you're already getting traffic from the piece, and what'll happen over time is occasionally there'll be some other shoulder niche, some other related topical niche that'll start to emerge. And as you're watching your keyword ranking reports, you'll see these keywords start to manifest, but they're really not the answer that people were looking for. They're sort of slightly related or a new use case for the product. That's typically a good indicator with keyword rankings that a new topic is going to emerge and then it's worth writing about, right? Because we've already covered this in some niche, but there's some other related topic that no one's really gotten to yet, but it's there. The third thing I would say is, and this is probably the most, I think, established strategy, just because people use this for content marketing anyways, is find topics competitors haven't covered at all. I'm not talking about gaps where 3 of your competitors have already written about this and you haven't. I'm just saying find topics that haven't really been covered in a really nice way. So Wikipedia can be a great way for this, right? There tend to be pretty extensive articles on topics there, and that can be a really easy way for you to figure out where is there a keyword ranking, some set of keywords that haven't really been covered by anyone else in my market that I could easily cover. The second thing I would say is subreddits. So a lot of subreddits will have highly involved and sort of a deep dive into a specific topic, right? So, the keto subreddit will have all these informational keto pieces, and maybe you can find something that hasn't really been covered, by a competitor to a really nice degree. So again, the content marketing success with first to market isn't just a sort of cakewalk, right? You have to be able to create something that looks really good. What I'm more so saying is if you already have the design chops and you have a qualified content marketing team, it's relatively easy to then take that and basically dress up something that's already been covered, cover it in a better way, write something significantly better with more information, more data than just sort of the wiki that some group might have, right? And then the third thing I would say is forums, right? The old forums. So the thing with forums that's really nice is you will find highly engaged communities that are covering very, very specific topics, right? So you can find some groups that have been, they go back to 1999. You can find some topics generally when you're looking at their rankings for, a conversation that happened in 2004 about something tangentially related to your product that you can leverage that no one else has touched. So that's a really good way to get in on that traffic, right? So say on the F-150 forums, someone was covering a specific conversion for a lift kit and, that's what's ranking in Google, but hasn't been covered by you or the competition. So that's a really good entree for either of y'all. So you should probably do it first to actually get in there and cover the topic in a nice way, but then, of course, integrate your product or, whatever really the brand play there or the mindshare play is there for you. The fourth thing I would say is reach out to frontline salespeople and customers. and or customers. So your front-end customer service reps and your salespeople are actually going to have a lot of insights about the questions and problems that people are having. So there's a benefit to having a nice fact page just because you can save time for your salespeople. They don't have to go out and have the same conversations a million times about what's what. So that has a sales benefit. But on top of that, again, your frontline sales and customer service reps are really going to know what problems are out there that haven't been addressed. So you can save yourself time internally, and you can also help your salespeople significantly. But there's this third benefit in terms of you can possibly leverage that into a first-to-market piece of content that no one's covered. The fifth thing I would say is, and this is probably the roughest, right, is coin your own term. So in the SEO industry, the person that I constantly think about is Brian Dean with the skyscraper technique, right? So he took what's arguably sort of was a well-established strategy amongst some content marketers and rebranded it in a very specific way. Obviously wrote an amazing article, but coining a term is an excellent way to sort of be number one, be the person that's covering it, and that's probably the trickiest one, right? Because you're sort of going out on a limb. You're trying to shoot a home run, and you have no idea if there's going to be a return because you don't have any trend data, you don't have any community interest, you don't have any keyword data. So number 5 is kind of like rolling the dice, but that can also be a good way to be first to market. So all that said, the thing that I really find interesting is you actually don't want to be first to market argument, right? So Peter Thiel, talks about this, how there's hundreds of competitors that were the first people to invent something and basically got destroyed by the second to market competitors that did it better. So, Xerox invented the GUI, but Apple really made it what it is today. So, I think that it's worth covering what the actual things are you should be thinking about. So, you as the person that's trying to use this strategy, or you as the person that's saying, well, should I really write something that's been written? I write things that have been written all the time, and we still rank them. A lot of that has to do with better design, more intelligence in how we actually execute the piece, and then better SEO, which I'll get into in a second, right? So the first benefit of being second to market actually is you can exploit a proven model. So the danger of going out on a limb and try to just hit a home run or just sort of writing something that's never existed before is you don't actually know if it's going to work. When you're looking at keyword trend and ranking data, it's pretty easy to say, this market has 1,000 searches a month, so I know I'm actually going after something. And that can be risky for some people if you're only producing 1 or 2 pieces of content a month. You don't really want to take risks. If you're doing 10, 12, whatever it may be, then you're probably more open to taking risks, trying to coin your own term. That's really how I think about it. The sort of second benefit for the also-ans, the people that are the copying who actually establish a specific keyword niche, you can sort of analyze where the competitor has holes in their overall argument. So, sort of going back to this argument, if we have a piece of content that's ranking for, let's say, 100 keywords, and slowly over time you see about 10 keywords that you start ranking for that are related because they're emerging into the market, but Google doesn't really have a close answer for them. And over like, let's say 1 year, I've seen this happen all the time. It can be a few months, a year, 2 or 3. You probably want something with, a quicker return. But over time, then that sub niche ends up being 90 searches, 90 more keywords, and it ends up being a couple thousand searches a month. So it's actually worth being in. What'll often happen is people will have this original piece that they sort of wrote, right? Everything's really good, and then they'll write this corollary piece, but they won't really cover the whole topic. Like there'll still be some other part of this overall keyword cloud that we're envisioning here where they haven't covered it. So you as the second to market person can really look at that and figure out what's worth exploiting, what can you use to your advantage. The third thing is that you can leverage better SEO and journalists who've already covered the topic. So if you're second to market, you can see who's covered the topic. and you can also see what all the rankings look like, which means for people like me who are SEOs, it's pretty easy to sort of see where the featured snippets are, and we can sort of establish these strategies where we format the article in a specific way to exploit that, and that can be a really good way to shoehorn into a quite competitive niche. Obviously, it's going to take some resources to reach out to these journalists, but you know, if you're just sort of stepping the game up one extra step, like, you know, it's kind of easier to say like, oh, he was interested in XYZ. We covered this, but we covered something broader, you know, something more interesting about that topic. That's a pretty excellent strategy. So, all that said, for your small business, you're really gonna be like David out there trying to fight Goliath, right? That's basically how I think about this strategy, right? Like, you have giant companies out there that are going to be able to break into your niche pretty easily because they have all the SEO metrics, they have the domain authority, they may have qualified SEOs. So you as David versus Goliath, you really do have to depend on these first-to-market content pieces, right? You can do so much for your brand if you're able to locate these opportunities and go after them. The problem is you're probably going to have SEOs inside massive corporate machines that are basically trying to copy you once your model is established. So that dynamic exists within the market. My intent with this video was to talk a little bit about how you, as the David or even as the Goliath, can locate these opportunities and then sort of exploit them more often. The danger is that, you know, either side gets complacent, right? So if you're a David, going back to the whole skyscraper technique, if you Google skyscraper technique, the Goliath that actually ranks in the featured snippet is HubSpot. So HubSpot has way more domain authority, most likely. I didn't check that, but they're able to rank there. And again, they probably did this work of looking for gaps in the original coverage, and they're able to exploit the featured snippet and probably steal a lot of traffic away from the original skyscraper technique article, even though the Backlinko really coined the term. So that can happen. That said, for any David out there, for any small business that's trying to grow and trying to establish your niche and place in the market, you're really, really reliant on these strategies. You have to find these opportunities that are low competition and do everything you can to get them.